Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged.
Welcome to Lattes and Leaders. We have a very special guest with us today, somebody that I've followed and admired for a long time. So would you welcome Tom Murray with us today?
Hey, Brad, what an honor to be with you. Lattes and Leaders. And I'll tell you what, I think on this morning I could use an extra latte, that's for sure. So I could use some of that caffeine, but what an honor it is to be. And I'll say the same. I've admired your work for a long time, my friend, and thanks for having me on. What an honor to be here.
So, like I said, I've followed you for a long time, but do you want to share kind of how you got started in your journey a little bit in education?
Yeah, for sure. You know, I went to college originally thinking I wanted to be pre-med. I knew I wanted to work with kids, and I thought that was the right field for me. And I did my freshman year, and I loved it. But something hit me, and I just realized that I wanted to work with kids more on a full-time basis, not just when they were sick. And so moved over to the education side. I graduated from a Muhlenberg College in Pennsylvania. Started teaching fourth grade in a great school district here in Pennsylvania, and I look back on those first few days, realizing like I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like just trying to figure it out, right? I remember that first day, and if you're listening, maybe you can remember your very first day teaching. I remember that door closing for the first time, and there's no cooperating teacher with me being like, well, I guess it's on. Like, it's time to figure this out, right? And so I taught fourth grade for a number of years. I loved that. Then I went and taught middle school, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, which was quite the change, but I loved that too. I did that for a while, and then I had a principal that helped change my life who walked in. I thought I was going to be content teaching middle school. I loved the craziness of the age group. He walked in one day and said he's got about 3 years left in the building, and he thinks I should be running the building someday when he leaves, and said, go finish your principal certification, to which kind of piqued my interest a little bit. Went back to school, finished my third master's degree in educational leadership, and ended up, I didn't know at the time, about a year later, the assistant principal, which I'm sure he knew at this point, was leaving mid-year. They were able to make me a teacher on special assignment to kind of do quasi VP type of role, and realized that I enjoyed that, even though I was doing some of the low level discipline stuff to kind of to get get my feet wet a little bit. I ended up being the assistant principal in that building for a few years. Number of years later, actually moved to be an elementary principal. Loved that. One of the greatest jobs on the planet. Moved then to district office, was asked to go to district office. We were launching our own virtual program. This is back in 2009. One of the first districts in the country to do so in our K-12 public school. Was over at district office for a number of years. We were featured on Digital Learning Day in its second year, which is now my home organization. And so we were featured that first year. My superintendent and I went down to Washington, D.C. The Secretary of Ed was there, members of Congress there, really big deal. They asked me to come back the following year to be on a panel. They reached out and they said, Arnie Duncan's going to be there and Chairman Wheeler from the FCC, and want to know if you'd want to be the panel. And I legitimately was like, I think they reached out to the wrong person, because like one of these is not like the other, right? So I said, sure, if you want me, I don't want me, right? And then a few weeks later after that, ended up getting a recruiting email saying, we're looking for someone. And I'm thinking to myself, like, well, who do I know? And then kind of hit me of like, wait a minute, they want me to go work for them in DC, which I'd never dreamed. I wasn't looking to leave. Loved what I was doing. Loved the people that I work with. Ended up taking the position with All for Ed, which is my home organization in Washington, D.C. About 6 months after doing that, we launched Future Ready Schools, which today is kind of my baby in the work that we do. I've got a great team of people around me that lead the work, support the work, and so do that. But then also I get to be a writer, author a few books, and I get to speak around the country. They give me incredible flexibility, use a lot of vacation time to speak elsewhere. But it's an honor, because no matter where I go in the country, Brad, and I know you get to speak a lot as well, no matter where I go, there's great people working really, really hard for kids. And so it's just quite an honor to do the work that I do. And I always love to just thank those folks. If you're listening, you're working with kids every day, you're working in schools every day. Thanks for your work. Thanks for loving and caring about kids, the late nights, the early mornings, and thanks for tuning in to this episode as well. So a little bit about my journey there, Brad.
No, I love it, and you're so right. I mean, we're just it's so important to have that gratitude towards the teachers that are out there, and you like me just almost feel it's an honor to be able to share with them, to spend time with them, and be inspired by them. I mean, it's powerful. Like you said, the late nights, the early mornings. Just we're fortunate. Teachers get the bad deal a lot of times from a political standpoint, but man, I don't know what we would do without them.
Yeah, how about it? And Brad, one thing I appreciated just reflecting on that journey, and I haven't shared that little timeline for a while. I reflect on and appreciate the doors that people have opened for me along the way. A principal walking into my classroom saying, like, I see something in you that, to be honest, I didn't really see inside myself at that point. Other doors open, a superintendent down the road saying, hey, I know you're doing a great job in your building, but I need you over at district office because I want to start a new program and I think you're the right person to lead it. And I wasn't looking to do that. I wasn't looking to leave, cried like a baby the day that I left. But just recognizing that the work that we do is never about us, right? It doesn't mean we run over ourselves in the process. Doesn't mean we don't take care of ourselves in the process. I don't mean it that way. But what I mean is it's recognizing like the goodness in the collaboration, the goodness in the people around us, and the celebration of those that help us get to where we are. And if we're all honest with ourselves, nobody gets to where they are just based on their own merits, right? Having people open doors, which I think for me as an individual, compels me to try to do the same for other people, connect the dots, make connections, help people, support them. And that's the servant heart that I want to be known for.
I mean, I'm right there with you. Like I said, I know I've always felt that synergy with you, and as part of this is just giving people a voice from really all around the world to come on and share their experience. And I just I get so much out of it, and get those nuggets that each person carries with them and able to share them. So that's an awesome thing. When you look back on your journey and you talk about the people that impacted, what was there one or two, maybe even from your school time? I had a seventh grade teacher that greatly influenced me. So is there one or two people that really kind of stand out?
Oh yeah, I wish I had an hour just to go through this. You mentioned seventh grade. I want to give a shout out to Mr. Malone, my seventh grade English teacher. And the reason I say that is English for me. It's funny as an author in multiple best-selling books. Like, I actually really don't enjoy writing, and people sometimes are like, "Wait, what?" Right? Like, all that you wrote. It's not something I've ever sat down and said like, "Oh, I love doing this. I'm going to write for fun." And I remember going into seventh grade and almost being a little intimidated. And he was somebody that had such high expectations for us. I remember doing this assignment, and it wasn't long. It was a paragraph or two, but if you made one mistake, just one mistake in your final copy, you had to rewrite the whole thing. And it was like, what? Like, and I remember at first, like, almost having tears, being like, this is going to be crazy. But what he was teaching us was the importance of the details, the importance of taking our time, the importance of checking our work. And it sounds, and by the way, he was incredibly loving in the process. He also had this really dry sense of humor. And he just created an environment where he had really high expectations, but at the same time, he made me believe that I could do it, even in an area that I wasn't, there. And I remember sometimes that rewriting because I spelled one word wrong, rewriting because I missed a capital. But I went over and over and over, and at times being like, you know what? The details are important. And to this day, I still remember, it wasn't every assignment, folks. It was like literally that one assignment, and still to remember that. I also remember Mr. Labreglio. He was my AP bio teacher in high school. And he was somebody that just loved and cared about me. And I remember I had gone through a death in the family. And I remember him literally putting his arm around me and telling him he loved and cared about me. And I was a high school senior, I believe, junior or senior at that point. And there I was, 16, 17 years old with tears in my eyes. And I just knew that he truly cared, and he was fun, and he created an environment. I look forward to that class every single day. And, he was a model of just creating environments where people want to be. And so a shout out to both of them. And it's funny being a male I started in elementary education. I just realized I called out two male teachers, which also I think makes the connection as a male in education, being typically it's a more female dominated from a teacher end, at least at the elementary level. And there I am calling that out. It was interesting. I think it also shows the importance of the ability to connect with people that are like you, right? Whether that's by race, whether that's by religion, whatever it might be. So I want to give the two of them a shout out, but they're two that I think about to this day.
I love that. And I love that, I always say high expectations don't mean anything without relationship first. And when you get that part, you can have those high expectations and you really want to live up to them then. And that
Yeah.
makes all the difference. So I
Yeah.
love that. And yeah, definitely a shout out to them and the impact that they had. I love that.
Yeah.
Love
You know,
that
Brad,
story.
you reminded me there. One of the things I talk about in Personal and Authentic is the idea of the hidden stories, right? The stories of my heart here and now, that other people don't know. I mean, here we are filming this podcast, and just 48 hours ago, I laid my grandma to rest. She was 98 years old, and but it's something that's on my heart. I woke up this morning, had a heavy heart, just kind of missing and grieving her, and it's something. I didn't share that with you. You didn't know, right? But it was a story that was on my heart here and now in this moment. And when I talk about hidden stories, talking about the stories, and hidden doesn't mean bad. I mean, it can be good. It just means people don't know, right? And so one of the things we talk about high expectations, I think a key to building culture and those connections, relationships is having empathy for the hidden stories inside of other people. But when I share that, I would also say the notion of and the importance of high expectations. We're not lowering, saying, oh man, that person's really been through something. They're probably not going to be able to be successful on this. And the moment we lower our expectations at the same time, now we're part of the problem. And so it's high expectations for all kids, but at the same time, that love and that empathy and that compassion. And I think that's just an and there and not an either or.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And man, yeah, you know, uh, condolences for that. That's tough, but it sounded like she lived a pretty
It
long,
did.
full
90.
life.
I'm not living to 98, Brad. I can tell you that. So
Exactly. Yeah, I was about
it was
to
her
say,
time. It was her time, and we got some closure. But it was, I think it's important, and I think anybody that's listening can relate, right? Every kid that walks into our classroom, every adult across the hall has stories on their hearts that we don't know, and we've got, whether you call it the invisible backpack, some people call it, or just the hidden stories, as I like to call it, a personal and authentic. I think it's important getting to know your people, the relationships, and especially those days then when we can tell something's off, something not isn't right with Johnny over here. I can just, he's not himself today, right? And that only comes through the relationships and the connections, which is truly the foundation of our work.
yeah, and that's so true even for administrators. When you know your staff, you know when something's off a little bit, or just the better you know them and know their life. It's not like that you have to know everything about their life, but it is important to know enough that you know when they're going through struggles and even with our peers, our colleagues, we got to be supportive of each other and be there for each other. And so
Yeah.
that's important for teachers too. But
Yeah,
definitely, yeah,
the other
for us.
people, yeah, the other piece I can add to that, and getting to work with administrators a lot as well. One of the things I wrote in Personal and Authentic, that the difference between making a judgment, which your brain does naturally, right? Your brain is wired to make connections. Your brain is wired to judge. Inherently, it's not a bad thing. It's a safety thing, right? The difference between making a judgment and having empathy is understanding the story, right? And it's the power of the story, the power of that connection. And so a challenge for our listeners is, how do we get to know the stories of our people, right? How do we get to know the stories of our kids? And that can only be through time and through connection and through opportunities. And so, getting to know the stories of our people allows us to teach them better and to be able to connect with them and get to know them and build that trust and connection. And when kids know that they can trust you and that you love and support them, doesn't mean they're going to be perfect. It doesn't mean you're not going to be a knucklehead. I mean, let's be
Right.
real. We've all been teenagers before, right? Like, their brains are interesting places, right? But they're certainly much more prone to make that connection and want to perform for you as well. And so I think it's just an important aspect of all the work, whether you're teaching kindergarten or you're a superintendent.
Yeah, yeah, and their brains aren't just interesting; they're a wild place
How about it, right?
for sure. So, what's going on now? Is there a project or something you're working on now that you would like to share?
Sure. Yeah. No, I appreciate the shout out. So my home organization's called All for Ed. It's ALL, the number 4 ED. It's a bipartisan nonprofit group out of Washington, D.C. And one thing that I'm excited about, so we actually, we released a post-election poll. And, don't worry, I'm not going to be, if you're listening, I'm not getting political here, folks, but hear me out for a moment. We actually worked with a Republican and Democratic pollster. as an education organization together with a Republican and Democratic pollster to survey across the country, people, just the public, as they were leaving. And if you go to allfored.org, you'll see it right on the homepage there if you scroll down a little bit. And the results are fascinating, but at the same time, they're also, to me, really encouraging. Regardless of the side of the aisle, overwhelmingly, people support public schools. Overwhelmingly, Republicans and Democrats support workforce, CTE, pathways, the connections to like real connections to learning. And it was really interesting to see. And there's certainly things and phrases of like, wow, these words, these phrases, these topics, those are hot button issues. And we certainly know we could probably all point to those. But I would encourage people to check that out, because working with both sides of the aisle to create a poll to say, what does the public really think about our public schools, about things like, and it was interesting too, because, one of the questions is around this notion of like SEL. And in some places, nobody thinks twice about it. In other places, they're like, whoa, 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 what are you doing with my kids? But it was interesting. So you see a disconnect there. And then you follow up with a question of, well, what do you think about supporting mental health in schools? And then across the board, people are like, oh, yeah, we need to do that. Right. And you're like, wait, not one, but the other. And you're talking about the same thing, which shows our language really matters.
Exactly.
The way we share things with our schools really matters. And so I'd encourage people to check that out, because it also helps us understand what are the words, the phrases, and the way we're talking about things that people can relate to and people are okay with and connect with. What things do we have to be careful of? Just recognizing the time of our day and all those pieces. And so that's something that I'm super excited about. Just released that recently. Go to allfored.org. You can see that off the homepage there as well. Also excited about our work at Future Ready Schools. We don't sell anything. We're we're the practice side of All for Ed, and getting to work with school and district leaders across the country. Every time, every event that we do, every virtual in-person event that we do, every connection that we do there, no matter where it is, there's great people working hard for kids. Doesn't mean there's not needs, doesn't mean we don't make mistakes, but I just get excited about that work. So I'd encourage folks to check out futureready.org there as well. That's the stuff in my day job. And, as an author and speaker, I've been doing a lot of workshops, a lot of things for leaders. And, I just want to take a moment again to say thank you to those people leading the work that every day. The issues that folks are facing today are very, very real. They need to be thought through. Nothing can be just solved with like a flip of a switch here. But I'll tell you, I'm very grateful for those folks that are principals, that are superintendents, that are constantly under fire for certain things, at the same time being resilient through the adversity to do what they need to do for the best of kids.
Absolutely. And, we know that that's a tough job because the turnover rate of superintendent's the highest, and then principal, and then teacher. So,
Yeah.
they're facing a fire every day.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
pre-COVID, the average superintendent was there for about 3.5 years. The latest poll AASA had done, and it shows it's under 3 years, which
Right. Yeah.
also
A
means
little over 2 years. Yeah.
with the average superintendent contract being 3 to 5 years, which means the average superintendent doesn't even fulfill their first contract.
Right.
Which to me is fascinating, which creates culture issues and vision issues and all sorts of things, and trust and worry and frustration and all those changes. And so, sometimes I'll meet a superintendent and they'll say, I was just with one in Kansas just last week. And they, I've been here for 20 years. And I'm thinking like, well, you are on borrowed time, my friend, because your time's coming. Right. And so just truly though, thank you for the work, for our principals, and every leader in between as well. It's my first words of personal authentic, Brad, where the work is hard, but our kids are worth it. And that's what we can't lose sight of there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah. And I love all that you're doing. I think, like you said, the wording is so important too. I think sometimes in education, we try to carry jargon or educationese, I call it, into the public, and we really have to learn to speak a language they understand better. Because like you said, a simple phrasing can be the difference between them going, what is this? What are you doing? And being, oh yeah, I'm in full support. The same thing, just, how we present it. And I think that's important too.
Yeah. I like to call it buzzword bingo. I think we buzzword the heck out of everything we do in education. Now, internally, like there's reasons we use certain words or phrases, but it becomes so commonplace for us that sometimes we're sitting across from a parent at conferences and, under ESSA, the one that replaced NCLB for our IEP, the SDIs, and part of our ITRI process, what we're going to do is, and the parents like, they have no idea what we're talking about. right? To us, it just is commonplace in what we do. And it's not a knock against mom or dad. It's just that's not their lingo, right? If I were to go to a medical conference today and down near you in Atlanta, I would have no concept of what they're talking about if they just buzzworded everything they do. But if they just talk to me like a human being, it's kind of like going to the doctor, right? Like if all they did was read the results of some test, you're like, so am I living? Like, tell me what that is, right?
How long have I
And
got?
so, right? But you just want them to be a human. Like, talk to me like a human. Meet people where they are, and there you go. I mean, you want to talk about a key to a leadership, right? It's meeting people where they are, and so I think that's just such a vital piece in our communication, but also in our leadership.
When you think back over your career and the different paths, what would you say? And it may not be the key, but what do you think is one of the most important keys to your success as a leader?
So I mentioned earlier other people, recognizing that this work is incredibly lonely and incredibly challenging the more you try and do it yourself. And I think early on, I became a principal when I was 27. And, on one hand, like I was probably one of the youngest, I know I was one of the youngest principals in Pennsylvania at the time. And I'm also saying that wasn't necessarily the greatest thing. Like I feel people had given me opportunities. I wasn't saying this is what I want to go do. There were opportunities that came and things worked themselves through it. But in retrospect, I recognized like, man, I had a lot to learn. And I remember in those first years, I'm running around trying to solve everybody's problem. My buddy Todd Whitaker wrote the book Shifting the Monkey, and the monkey is the problem, right? And I'd run to somebody and they'd share an issue and let me call that parent for you. And I'd take the monkey and I'd put it on my back and I'd go to the next room and I'd share it to somebody else. And, oh, I need you to do this. And I'd take their monkey and I'd put it on my back and I go back to my office. I got 47 monkeys on my back with 47 people being like, hey, did you get to that yet? Did you get to that yet? And I started to realize I was trying to do all things by yourself, but as leaders, but there's only so much time in the day. There's going to be so many issues and so many pieces. And so just the notion of empowering others to make decisions, building capacity in other folks to lead. So you're not trying, like if your people are constantly coming to you to ask for permission for everything, we're probably not building the capacity that we need to in folks. And so that took me a while to learn. And so I would add that with the combination of the notion of learning to fail forward, right? I don't think anybody likes failure, but the idea that you're human and you're going to mess it up sometimes, as good as you are, as talented as you are, no matter how many degrees hang on your wall, you're going to mess it up sometimes. But in those moments, you own it. And then you model to others, hey, life goes sideways sometimes. I'm going to mess it up. But here's how we're going to pick up the pieces. Here's how we're going to make it right for kids. And I think that takes vulnerability. And I think vulnerability is such a key to leadership. And it's something that early on, I don't think I got. I need to look like I got all the answers to my folks, and recognizing, no, people will see right through that. And there's times that you're just not going to know. You're not going to be on the expert on something that they have a question on. It's okay to say, I don't know. I'll find that out for you. Let's figure that out together. But when things go sideways like they will, we own it as leaders. And then we pick up the pieces, we move forward, and we try to be better for next time, right? And I think that's something that was hard for me early on as a young leader, but I think it's something over time that I realized, hey, life is going to happen when we work with thousands of people, or 100, whatever the size of your place that
Right.
you lead, right? And I think that's just such a key to leadership.
Yeah, and I think that's such a good word too, because I think so many that are new in leadership, maybe like a new principal, they're like that. They feel like they have to do everything, take on everything, have all the answers, or they feel like maybe it's the imposter syndrome if they don't. They're afraid people are going to think they're not up to the task or whatever. So, and it does sometimes take time for us to figure that out and say, hey, you know what? I don't have to know it all. They don't expect me to know it all, and I definitely can't do everything. And once you figure that out, it just makes it a lot easier.
For
Or
sure.
easier. I don't know if a lot easier, but it makes it sustainable anyway. Yeah. Well, that is awesome. That is awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate you. I don't want to keep too much more of your time, but I appreciate you stopping by and sharing. I love the work that you're doing. I'll definitely share the resources that you mentioned. I do have one more question, though. And we kind of talked about it earlier, but it's called Lattes and Leaders. And I did this because when I mentored administrators through the years, I didn't like to meet at the school or in an office. I liked a more informal setting. So usually it would be at a coffee house or something. People tend to be, share more and be more open, less guarded. But so if we were at the coffee house, what would be your drink of choice?
Oh, I guess it depends on the day and how exhausted I was, but I'm a chocolate guy, so I'm going with like a nice mocha latte, something along those lines. So next time I'm with you, Brad, that's what we can share right there.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds good. All right. Well, hey, man, seriously, I appreciate you taking the time to be on. Like I said, I followed you for a long time, love your work, and was excited about being able to share a little bit of your time and all that you're doing. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Awesome. Well, if the feeling's mutual, Brad, thanks for the opportunity.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.